everybody else got one of these sheets we've been working on the last couple of weeks? Okay. If you have a Bible, you might want to open it up to Romans chapter 12. We're going to continue our series on the gifts of grace mentioned here. Before we get into the lesson, let's go to our Heavenly Father in a word of prayer. Joe, would you lead us in an opening prayer, please?
Kind gracious Lord, Father, we thank you once again for this day, Lord, and for each and every one that we can make it out. Just a class tonight, Father, and open our eyes up, Father, even though we're not fortunate enough to make it with us. We have to do this blessed name.
Okay, as we've again generally looked at the idea that we know in the first century they had miraculous gifts. Some of those mentioned in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 through 14. But in Romans chapter 12, the lesson we've been looking at, there are gifts that, again, for ease of understanding, that we do not confuse them with the miraculous gifts. We've called them the gifts of grace or grace gifts because of the statement found again in Romans chapter 12. As we have looked now at the first four of these gifts in particular, we're going to try to get the last three in tonight, but if we don't, that will be okay. As again we've pointed out, we've looked at the gift of prophecy, of service, of teaching, and of exhortation or encouragement. Tonight we're going to start with the gift of giving. Interesting, I guess, perfect timing. This is a period of time what everybody calls a time of giving. Most donations are made or collected around this time each year. What do we mean, though, when we talk about the gift of giving? As I pointed out, I believe that these gifts that are mentioned are given to us by God probably before we're born. We see in the natural world, the world outside of the church, that there are evidences of these gifts in society. In regard to this, and it's interesting as I was thinking about this, that we have these little sayings, and they seem so appropriate when we're talking about these gifts. We have a phrase that says he would give you the shirt off his back. What is that talking about? It's, I believe, the idea of the gift of giving, that God has granted certain people this ability to not only give, but also to use money in very unique and good ways. The idea of sharing what they have, and again, it may not be very much, doesn't have to be. To have this gift of giving means even you are going to share what little you have with others without hesitation. Many of us hesitate. We say, well, I don't know if I have enough for myself, let alone other people. The person who has this gift of giving does not hesitate. They will, again, share with you whatever resources that they have at their disposal. There is, again, this need to provide for others is again part of their it's part of their life. Again, you have probably met people that you would recognize this trait or characteristic in them. And again, as Christians, again, we need to recognize that there are people that have this gift of giving. Another phrase that we have, and I think it may very well apply to this idea of the gift of giving, is we say that certain people have a Midas touch. It seems like no matter what endeavor they try, they prosper at it financially. And again, I have come across several people. One person that I think of quite frequently when I think about this idea of this person having this gift of giving. He was again rich, but you would not know it. Would open his home. He would help you out in whatever way was imaginable. One time we were visiting him, and as we were visiting, we were going to spend the night. And as we were visiting him, the muffler system on our vehicle decided to take a nosedive. And when we got to his house, he said, no problem. He took us right down to, I don't know, Midas or some place, and had a new muffler system installed. And I said, well, I don't know how or when I can pay you back. He said, just pay it in the future. Pay it off to somebody else. He said that, I'm not worried about it. He said, we can help you out. We're glad to help you out. But it wasn't just in that area, but again, I say in every area. Fantastic businessman, made a lot of money, but again, he didn't act like this is my money, that he was willing to share that with other people. It was interesting. I came across a bit of knowledge about this person from the preacher that was at his congregation. I didn't know this at the time, but the fellow that I know loved to preach, and he thought about quitting his job and going into preaching. And the preacher said, something? He said, dude, we all have different abilities. And he said, you have an ability that is beneficial to the church in ways that you can't imagine. He said, to give that up, to go into something which you might not be as skilled or profitable at, would probably be a waste. And he decided not to go into preaching. And many good things have come out of the fact that he did not go into preaching. Doesn't mean he didn't preach, because he taught and he preached. But at the very same time, his gift, his talent, was in this area of giving. And again, as we looked under the middle column, what is the message? Well, it's God's message to all of us. Well, in this particular instance, it's that God provides. In the story of Abraham, remember when Abraham goes to Mount Moriah, where he's told to offer his son up as a sacrifice. The servants, along with Abraham, get the provisions together, and they are on their way, and they stop at the mountain, and they take off the bundle of wood that's going to be used for the fire, and they have other things that are necessary for the sacrifice. And Isaac asked his dad, Abraham, what about the sacrifice? Where is the sacrifice at? And Abraham's response is something that we need to take notice of. And that is, Abraham responded by saying, God will provide. In that instance, of course, we know that after God prohibited or stopped the sacrifice of his son, that he provided in the bushes that were there. He provided a ram that's got its horns entangled in that, and therefore God provided the sacrifice. We see God providing throughout the entire Bible. Therefore, one of the gifts or characteristics or traits of God is the idea of giving. God wants to give us blessings. Malachi says that if we do what God says, will not God open up the windows of heaven for us? Very beautiful illustration. But again, there are people that just have this ability, again, as I said, to willing to give their shirt off their back if it would be of benefit to you. What is the person expecting when they give like this? Now, sadly to say, most people, when they give a gift, it's sort of like Jesus is talking about in the book of in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, that they are looking for a gift in return, something in return. You give me a gift, I give you a gift. But the person who has this is not looking for a gift of equal value. His gift is in his giving. He loves to give. And therefore, all he is expecting is just an appreciation. Thank you. Again, this is not the response that most people give when they are giving gifts. Maybe while this is Christmas, we need to really consider the idea of what we do as far as giving. Why do we give gifts? I should say Debbie. We were messaging today. Everybody's wishing everybody Merry Christmas, and my Baja mug got in those comments. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. You give, you don't give. I don't care. And there was a discussion I heard yesterday on this subject, and someone was saying, well, adults shouldn't even be participating in Christmas as far as giving gifts. We're just looking for something in return. That's a sad attitude, but that sadly is the situation with most people, but not with the person who has a gift of giving. He's not looking for something in return. He's looking to see the appreciation from you, that you realize, this couldn't have come at a better time. I really needed this, and I am thankful to you for it. And usually the response is, I don't know if I can ever repay you. And their response is, your thanks is enough. That's all I'm looking for. Again, there are some people that have this as a gift. I think we should all learn to practice it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a beautiful attitude. But at the very same time, most gift giving is not based upon, I really just want to give you a gift. You don't have to give me anything in return. Um, but okay, I'll drop that. But um, as we think about this idea of again, what is our response? If we say thank you, that is response enough for these people. Um, who are some of these people that we might think about the idea of giving? Paul mentioned in the Corinthian letter about the Macedonians. He said they were willing to give of themselves first, and that is a true spirit of one who understands this gift of giving, that they give themselves first. And again, a very beautiful idea there. Barnabas, we might say, again, we've already used Barnabas as especially, in the gift of exhortation. That's his nickname. Barnabas means son of encouragement or son of exhortation. His name is Joseph. We don't remember him as Joseph. So, which gift did he have? I don't know if he had either one of these gifts, but he did have the gift of giving. How do I know that? Well, that's how we were first introduced to him in Acts chapter 4. Whenever he had property, he sold it and he laid it at the apostles' feet. All right. By the way, the opposite idea of the gift of giving is seen in Ananias and Sapphira in the next chapter, chapter 5 of the book of Acts. Why are they the opposite? You say, well, didn't they give? Yes, they gave. For what purpose? To elevate themselves. If you're giving for the purpose of elevating yourselves, then you're not giving. You are looking for praise from other people around about you, and that's not giving. All right. So, anybody have any thoughts or comments you'd like to bring out about this idea of people who might have this gift of giving? Nothing? Let's go on to the next one. As we see, it's the gift of leadership, as Paul mentions in Romans 12 and verse 8. The one who leads with zeal. That person must lead with zeal. As I put it out several weeks ago, most people do not feel comfortable leading. Most people, if you give them a task, they are willing to follow that particular task. They may know your abilities or your traits, and they may give you a task in that particular area. And you're happy to accomplish the task. But most people don't like to get in front of a group of people and say, here, you do this, you do this, you do this. All right? What is the ministry? This is a person who organizes. He administers. He leads. He directs. A phrase, as I'm thinking about this, a phrase that we hear all the time, he's a natural born leader. How many times have we heard that phrase? Does that fit everybody? Not by a long shot. Most of us don't like to step out into the lead. And by the way, when I say that most people don't like doing something, understand this is why the gifts are given. That people feel more comfortable in certain of these areas. And again, as we pointed out, all of these things that are given, as Paul indicated earlier, are for the benefit of the church. So don't we need leaders in the church. Absolutely. God has given leaders at certain periods of time for certain difficulties or situations they're in. Thinking about the book of Judges. And again, we've got to be careful that, we think that these leaders came frequently. The book of Judges covers a period of about 400 years. And we don't have that many judges listed over that period of time. But the judges were like administrators, leaders, organizers, getting people to go in a particular direction. As we see this happening, there are some leaders that the Bible clearly mentions, but I don't think they were natural leaders. One of the best examples would be Moses. I don't think Moses was a natural leader. He took on the challenge and he did well as any man could have. But remember the conflict he had whenever the Lord came to him and he said, I want you to lead my people. And Moses gave excuse after excuse after excuse. I don't want to do this. Right? But yet he stepped up to the task. And this is what I pointed out in these gifts. You're probably given one particular gift, and I know you are because the Bible says that we all have these gifts. You have to determine which gift is yours, and again, use that gift for the benefit of the cause of Christ. But at certain periods of time, we need people to step forward to take a role in one of these other areas that we are not comfortable with. We have, again, this phrase that says, getting outside your box, or, you're not comfortable outside your box, but sometimes we have to do that. I think Moses was doing that. He became a good leader, not because of choice, not because he was a natural leader, but because God needed him at that period of time. Again, we need someone to give us a basic direction. There's a phrase the Bible uses on several occasions. It talks about sheep without a shepherd. And I think that is what is being identified here. That, we have a lot of sheep, but we don't have a whole lot of shepherds. We don't have people stepping out and taking the lead. And yet this is a very necessary quality. The Bible talks about the fact that without leadership, a people will come to doom, will come to failure. And again, there are some people that just have this natural ability to see in a moment of chaos, something has to be done. And they step forward. They begin giving instructions to people. Here, you do this, or you do that, or whatever. All right, they're just natural, have this ability to step out and take the lead when they see that nobody else is going to do it. Some people have that natural ability. And again, what is the message? The message is that God leads. God leads his people. God wants to take us in a certain direction. The problem is most people don't want to follow God. And by the way, that's another idea. If you might be a natural leader, but you're going to find a lot of rebellion about people not wanting to follow you or follow a set of instructions. They want to do it their way. Understand, just because you're a leader doesn't mean that people are going to follow. God is a leader. And yet we see that people frequently refuse to listen to what God instructs them to do. So again, with this idea of an ability that God has given certain people, there are disadvantages. Again, usually Usually the reason why most people don't step out to lead is they are frightened that they might get shot down. And guess what? People try shooting down leaders all the time. And what do? They don't care. There's a job that needs to be done. This is the person right now that's leading. Let's give them a chance. Let's give them an opportunity. Why? Because nobody else is stepping up at this period of time. And so we need leaders. We need good leaders. And by the way, again, as I pointed out, we had a discussion before we got into these 7 particular points that just because we have one of these gifts doesn't mean everybody else is going to be happy that we have that particular gift. We're going to face opposition in every one of these areas. But the idea is, if I am doing the thing that I feel comfortable doing, I really don't care what other people think. I am going to do what is necessary. Again, the discussion that we had earlier was, when did we receive this gift? There are some who believe that we don't receive this gift until we become Christians. I am not persuaded that is the case. Most people, when they become Christians, we don't see a noticeable change in characteristics in that person's life. They change direction, they change course, but that which motivates them is still what motivates them. So I am of the persuasion that we are given these gifts at birth, and there are some natural born leaders who are not Christians. They are leading people, and quite often they are leading people in the wrong direction. Why? Because they have this charisma about them that they step out and people just want to follow them. All right, and again, I believe this is a trait and ability that God gives to us at birth. And again, if you want to choose otherwise, I don't really care that you say, well, it's not until we become Christians that we receive these gifts. It's not like the miraculous gifts, by the way. The miraculous gifts were given to Christians. They were baptized, like we see in Acts chapter 8. The apostles then came down to Samaria, where Philip was preaching. The apostles laid their hands on these individuals, and they received miraculous gifts. Upon what individuals? Upon the Christians that were just baptized in that area. But these gifts, I believe, are different. Again, I believe they are a gift before we're born. But again, I'm not going to condemn you if you believe otherwise. But I believe in the world, as we look around us, we see people who just have a natural ability to get out in the lead and go a certain direction. What are they looking for? They are in their life, they are looking at situations and saying, what can I do to improve this situation? Most people don't do that. Most people, if they go into an organization or a group of people, they want to fit in. They don't want to take the lead, they want to fit in. But people who have this ability to lead, they go into a situation and say, how can I improve this? What can I do to make it better? Now, again, as I pointed out, whenever you do that, what happens? You're upsetting the apple cart. You ever heard that phrase? You're gonna come in and you're gonna change things. And people say, well, what's wrong with status quo? What's wrong with leaving everything the way they were? Because maybe it's not as efficient. Maybe it's not organized at all. Maybe it is doing more harm than good. A good leader looks at the entire situation and says, how can we improve this? Well, most people don't want to do that. They do not want to upset the apple cart. We'll just sort of go along with the plan, whether they like it or not. All right, leaders don't like that. By the way, what does a leader need? I like this under needed response. They must have the freedom to provide ideas and direction. That's something we don't like to do, by the way. The rest of us, the leaders, want to say, here, we can do better. We can take this a step further. We can go out and into this area or whatever the case might be. And everybody else sits back and say, well, we don't know if we want to go that way. And therefore, sometimes we try to hinder those who are trying to take the lead. It's a shame, but that is a natural tendency. Why? Because, again, most people don't like a rocking boat. They want it to be stable. But yet the leader says, well, here, we can make it more stable. Even though it might rock a little bit here at the beginning, it will become more stable in time. We have to trust that person. And we have to allow that person to take the lead. If you are a control freak, you don't like that. You don't like people taking control of the situation from you. You want stability. You want it to happen the way it's always happened. But when this person comes in and says we can make things better, there are some stubborn people that until the very last minute and they finally see the positive changes that are happening, they won't admit it until the very last moment in time. Again, leaders are going to be shot at because they're out in the lead. They are the ones that everybody is noticing at that period of time. Some of the leaders, the couple that are mentioned here are Joseph. Again, we see Joseph taking the leadership whenever his brothers didn't like it. We see Jethro coming to Moses and saying, hey, and Moses, what was Moses doing? Moses was taking every decision, every judgment that needed to be made with all of Israel and making each of those decisions. Can you imagine how time consuming that was? And Jethro says, here, why don't you organize this? Here, you put men in charge of 10 men, and then men in charge of 100 men and 1,000. And then only after they go through these smaller appeal processes do they find only the major cases ought to come before you. What's he doing? Organizing the situation. All right. I think another leader that we see in the Bible is Joshua. From the very first that we are introduced to Joshua, when is that? Remember when the 12 spies were selected to go into the promised land to spy it out? Joshua was one of the people picked, which indicates his tribe saw within him a leadership ability. And so they gave him this authority or permission to go on this scouting adventure. Whenever he comes back, he does not follow the crowd. He and Caleb say that we can take the land. Remember, the other 10 spies said, oh, we can't take the land. There are too many powerful people there. They're too strong, and we can't possibly overcome them. What did Joshua say? We can do it with the Lord's help. All right, and then we see every account. Then what we see with Joshua, it is Joshua, and again, I think with precedent, it is Joshua that goes up on the mountain with Moses. Whenever Moses receives the 10 commandments that are written on stone, who was with them? Joshua, coming down off that mountain. God is showing his leadership and letting Joshua's leadership stand out to the people. Finally, whenever Moses has to step down, God is not going to allow him to go into the promised land. Who is selected to lead the people? And by the way, who did the selecting? There was no vote. God said it's going to be Joshua. So I think Joshua would be another good example that you could put on the list there as to who are some of these natural leaders that God has given this natural ability to. Again, each one of these has its benefits to the congregation, but each one has its challenges that whenever we decide to do that. Even, we've already mentioned servants, but servants have their challenge too. But they are there to serve and they will do it faithfully. But at the very same time, they have challenges in serving people, sometimes who don't want to be served. All right. Thoughts, comments, questions on any of these points we've looked at so far? Yes, Roger.
On your list there, at least on a list that I would make up, would be, you wouldn't think so, but he stepped out when the time was right. The Apostle Paul.
Yeah.
And another thing, he realized that he had an adversary, meaning Satan. The word for him is accuser. Well, accuser of what? Being on the Lord's side.
Yeah.
He was going to be almost every city that he went to preach. He was either run out of town or, well, I'm going to just say run out of town. That works on you.
Yep.
If you're a quote in parentheses missionary, that works on you. If people don't want to hear, that's the number one thing you're going up against. Don't want to hear about God. So,
Yeah, Roger brought up something that I've questioned. I don't really have an answer for it. Peter said that each one of us has a gift. And we have to determine what our primary gift is. Does God give to some people multiple gifts? And as I pointed out, a case of Barnabas may be classified as a good giver, but he is definitely the son of exhortation. And I don't know how to answer that question, but I do know this. If I am using my gift properly, and again, whenever a need arises, I may have to get out of my comfort zone here and go into one of these other areas that I'm really not as comfortable with, but I learn to be more comfortable in that area. All right. The idea of let's say a leader. In order to be a leader, you have to have the ability, the courage to stand out in front of people. People don't like that. People don't like the attention drawn to themselves. And we become very uncomfortable when the attention is focused on us. Some have to develop into that. I had to. Everybody looked at me and said, "You?" I used to be extremely shy. I was terrified of being in front of a group of people. I'm comfortable with it now, but I wasn't. There wasn't something naturally that came to me. As I pointed out, I believe my natural gift is the idea of teaching. But now, when you think about that, if you're a teacher, sooner or later you're gonna have to get out in front of people. Now, you don't have to be in front of a multitude of people. You can be an individual teacher. In the case of Aquila and Priscilla, when they took aside Apollos, that was individual instruction. I don't have to be in front of a group of people. But eventually, I had to develop this idea of not being frightened to stand before people. Again, one of the greatest fears that people still have is the idea of public speaking, getting in front of a group of people and having something to say. It's not a problem for me anymore. In fact, I have to find out how to restrict what I got to say. But that wasn't always the case. When I first became a preacher, I was struggling each week to figure out, what am I going to preach on? What am I going to preach on? Now I try to have my sermons come from our daily Bible reading material that we've looked at that period, during that week. And it's not a problem for me to say, what am I going to preach on? The problem is, how can I eliminate all these other things and narrow it down to one particular point? Right? But that took effort and that took time. And that's what I'm saying. The gift that you have, in my case, it was teaching, may force me to now develop characteristics of these other traits or characteristics that I normally wouldn't have. But I've got to branch out sometimes, and that's what we all need to examine. So, do people have multiple gifts given to them, or does God bless them with one gift and then some of these others sort of fall in line after that one? I don't know how to answer that question. All right. Thank you for your time. The bell has rung. We will pick up here in just a few minutes with our devotional.
Song singing for song 596, 596. And then the invitation song will be 674. Shake hands.
Yes.
596, Victory in Jesus. I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard of his groaning, of his precious love atoning. Then I repented of my sins and won the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me and I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about his healing, of his cleansing power revealing, how he made the way to walk again, and caused the blind to see. And then I cried, dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit. I then obeyed his blessed command and gained the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior, forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He brought me and I knew Him, and all my love is to Him. He plunged me to victory, beneath the cleansing blood. I heard about the mansion He has built for me in glory, and I heard about the street of gold beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing and the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing out there the song of victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior, forever. He sought me and bought me with His redeeming blood. He brought me in, I knew Him, and all my love is to Him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing blood.
Starting Saturday and then continuing through most of this week, we will, in our daily Bible reading schedule, be looking at the book of Revelation. Again, most people don't like to look at Revelation. It is different language than we are familiar with. It's apocalyptic language. It speaks in different metaphorical and allegorical ways that we are not as familiar with, and because of that, it becomes more difficult. But I think there are certain parts in Revelation that are just very plain to understand. The two chapters 2 and 3, that have the 7 letters to the 7 churches are very plain to understand. And that is, no matter what, we need to be faithful to God while we are on this earth. But then from that scene, we go into the scene of this picture of heaven. As the door is opened, John looks in and he sees a throne and angels around the throne. 24 elders around the throne, bowing down before the throne, making certain statements. And all the statements refer to God's majesty and God's power and God's glory and the wonder that we should have standing before God. Wish we could see this picture. One of the things that is mentioned several times in these chapters is the idea that God alone is worthy. And not only is God the Father worthy, but remember, as he stands before everyone and he has in his hand a scroll. The scroll is written on the inside, on the outside. Means there's a lot of information, but it's sealed with 7 seals. And who can open up? Who has the authority to open up this scroll? And everybody was quiet in heaven, because nobody, no angel, none of the creatures that were around the throne, no human being could say that they were worthy. But yet there was this, if you will, the roar of a lion. But when everyone turns around, they see the Lamb of God And that lamb, of course, represents Jesus Christ. And it is stated about the lamb, worthy is the lamb. Nobody else is worthy. God is worthy. And we see now that this lamb is worthy to take the scroll and open it and reveal to us what we need to know. If we can understand that of that just a little bit of that majesty that is being offered to God, maybe we would bow in reverence to him while we are alive on this earth. Because if we get to heaven, we definitely will be bowing before him in heaven, because he is worthy to receive our praise and honor and glory and power. If you're not a child of God, if we can help you make that decision this evening, we ask that you might come forward at this time as we stand and sing this invitation song.
Have you been to
Jesus, for the cleansing power, are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in his grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
Are you washed?
Are you washed
in the blood?
in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb, of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Walking daily by the Savior's side, are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Do you rest each moment in the crucified? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
Are you washed?
Are you washed
in the blood?
in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Lay aside the garments that are stained with sin, and be washed in the blood of the Lamb. There's a fountain flowing for the soul unclean. Oh, be washed in the blood of the Lamb. Are you washed? Are you washed
in the blood?
in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
Good evening. Good to see everyone out tonight. One thing I got is I seen where Eric posted a minute ago that one of his co-workers, the Harris family, lost one. So we need to remember that family in our prayers. Anyone else have anything tonight?
Joe, can I just kind of off the cuff say I appreciate everyone and their prayers for Eric and Gracie and the family. It's difficult as a mother. You can't do something for your kids, but the men here have stepped up and been there for my son. Not just this time, but since weekend. And we've been blessed so much, very appreciated so much.
Prayers do help. That's
I
right.
pray that God blesses all of you.
That's what we can do. That's right. Anyone else tonight? Jason, you
come before you, thank you so much for giving us this time to come together here tonight. Pray to just continue to help us to look at your word and take the things from us, so we may live a life that's worthy of you and to as that example and salt of the earth. We pray this time for the family of the individual who just recently lost his life. We also pray for all those that have been affected by it, all the co-workers and everybody around about him. We just pray that you'll just please be with everybody involved. And we just pray that you'll just provide the peace and comfort from them if you can. We pray that your son means that some good may come to us. We pray that you'll just watch over us in all things. And again, we pray that you forgive us when we do sin. Please give us safe passage this evening. In Christ's name.
And it's no home, man, let's just go ahead. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I figured. Well, we went out in the woods yet then. They actually You see my mom?
Careful reading to me. I think, as soon as I talked to him, and it buzzed all over.
Hey,
Kayla, come this way, honey.
All of our kids.
It's just a big bikes running.
I